Jumping out of the shadows, a new next-gen release of Little Nightmares 2 makes a debut on Xbox Series X and S and PlayStation 5. Originally developed by Tarsier Studios, this enhanced edition comes via Supermassive Games, who go well out of their way to add a suite of major upgrades here, without too radically changing the art design already in place. Especially in terms of its tech, the game already looked beautiful in its animations, lighting, and ragdoll physics, all rendered on Unreal Engine 4. It combines to create an atmospheric, eerie puzzle platformer. On PS5 and Series X and S though, it's a visual design that gets pushed to greater heights. Ray tracing is promised to be added on all three machines, as well as upgraded light shaft quality and particle effects. And then we have a new menu toggle for a 60fps performance mode. So, how do PS5 and Series X compare? How stark is the upgrade over the last gen version of the game? And finally, can all three truly deliver a solid 60fps lock in its performance mode, or are there issues? To help me solve the puzzle, I'm joined by none other than Alex Battaglia. How's it going?
Hey there, Tom. This one's been a bit of a complex video production for a variety of reasons, so I'm happy to walk you through it in today's video.
Thank you. I guess let's just start off by saying what this game is, because frankly, we've never covered the series before. This is our first exposure to it. And is it fun?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't really played it itself, but I do have experience with previous games from Tarsier Studios, like Little Big Planet and the initial Ragdoll Kung Fu, which is so old now. But, you know, it's kind of a game that builds on the, I would say, strengths of Little Big Planet and Ragdoll Kung Fu 1, which is like these weird ragdoll kind of designs to everything, and then the puzzle platforming that you see in Little Big Planet. But, you know, I would say this reminds me a bit in terms of what you've just been talking about. I get like Inside vibes about it, you know, creepy, very atmospheric driven style, side-scrolling platformer game, though with puzzle elements. You know, it's slower paced, but it seems to be like a good game. Yeah,
it really is a tightly wound coil of a game. It's packed with really great surprises and some horrifying enemy designs. I think one real highlight is this teacher who like extends her neck to try and essentially eat you up.
Yeah, how unsettling.
They detect you anywhere on the level, so there's a lot of stealth in this game. I will also say the puzzles are pretty well designed in that they telegraph visually where you've got to go, what you've got to grab. Next-gen features are pretty straightforward in terms of explaining what's there. You get two modes. On the next-gen consoles, you have Beauty, which is a 30fps mode that targets 4K. And then there's a performance mode, which goes for 60fps with 4K as the target still, but they use DRS to help it along the way. So more on that later.
Yeah, nice.
And of course, we've got ray tracing and ray trace reflections, I should specify there, and enhanced volumetric lighting, and also spatial audio is on as well for TV setups.
So it seems like the way you're describing it, like both Beauty and Performance mode have the same visual features, but their primary difference will be in resolution and, of course, I guess performance, should things pan out. Yes. Well, how is it like there on Series S, for example? Like what exactly, we're getting all these new features and whatnot, but how is it actually in terms of resolution?
Yeah, so starting with Series S, this is the weakest of the bunch, but it still gets all the features that Supermassive has added. We have 1440p as the max resolution target, which feels kind of just right for the machine, doesn't it? So very much on spec. And then you've got a performance mode which goes for 60, and I've noticed the DRS range. I picked one example to find a lower bounds. It's this scene where you're basically running away from a huntsman. This guy with a shotgun kind of pursues you for a good 20 minutes, and it's just a cathartic release moment where you finally get a shotgun in this shed and you pull the trigger and you get a muzzle flash on this exact frame. It's a rare moment where everything suddenly goes bright.
And you can see, you know, TAA cannot compensate in such a moment like this, so it's has some pretty obvious aliasing, and this is where you counted the lowest, essentially.
It's a 972p, lowest on this point anyway.
Honestly, not bad, given what we've seen of Xbox Series S in the past. I think that's actually pretty reasonable.
And if we did the same on Xbox Series X, 4K in the beautiful mode, 30fps, but if we move to the performance mode, which is more exciting in my opinion, because platformers so hugely benefit from 60, It's 1890p in this shot where the muzzle flash goes off, 1890p, but it can go up to 4K. And then, of course, PS5, again 4K in that beautiful mode natively. It looks incredible. Then performance mode, this is where we see the DRS coming in, and that muzzle flash moment in the shed comes to 1684p.
Interesting. Okay, so a bit lower res there, essentially, on
yes.
PlayStation 5 than Xbox Series X. All right.
Yeah, so a big upgrade on what we had before. Good summary is PS4 Pro and Xbox One X both targeted 1512p. So no matter which mode you choose of the two that are available on next-gen consoles, it's an upgrade in terms of overall visual quality.
Nice. Okay. Let's actually get into the visuals, I would say here, starting with the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and talking essentially about what ray tracing is. So this game is based on Unreal Engine 4 that we talked about earlier. So they're using or utilizing, as per, like the press about this game, ray traced reflections, which is a default feature in Unreal Engine 4. It can replace the screen space reflections in the game. Unreal Engine 4 has a number of modes for reflections. It has like a lower end mode that is cheaper. It has a really high end mode for like visual architecture scenes. And it has a mixed mode that can also mix in SSR. But it seems like here, looking at the PlayStation 5 version, like we have these shots of the hospital here on PlayStation 5, which are rather interesting looking. This is like one of the areas in the game where you can definitely see the ray trace reflections most coming out here on PlayStation 5, adding in quite a lot to the scene. It seems to be a rather solid implementation here on PlayStation 5, and I actually I really like it. I mean, it's something you don't necessarily expect to see coming. I mean, most games that add ray tracing in them these days tend to hit target 30 FPS and maybe offer an optional 60 FPS mode, but that's a bit more rare. So I'm really happy to see this here coming in on PlayStation 5 especially.
Yeah, unexpected for a 60 FPS mode to bundle that in. So there's no trade-off. You get the same visual feature set. So if we pluck the last gen version, say PS4 Pro, and pit it against PS5, we have a range of upgrades, and some are more subtle, some are more obvious. You've got the light shaft upgrade, which stands out, just as you find this young puppet boy here, and you kind of walk to it, and you can see these shadows trailing behind our character. And likewise, when you're walking past the huntsman a bit later on, the shadow is much more defined, much more crisp, and all around just a really great upgrade.
Essentially, normal kind of like resolution upgrades for these effects, something that you would really expect. Because if you just up the resolution, these effects would still be at a lower resolution internally and would not look as good on the PlayStation 5. So it's nice that they at least upgraded that.
Yeah. So you get particle upgrades when you're walking through this musty air as well, and also the resolution of the volumetrics. So good stuff. And then we've got the ray tracing. So when we get on the raft to go to this, to end the first level, you can see, the PS5 has kind of this pixel accurate reflection of the building in the background as we pan by, and also the kids on the door here are reflected properly in the water as well. So there is something, and of course the hospital areas on PS5 are all so accurately reflected with proper properties applied to the floor surface here, kind of a diffused look that we just didn't get on PS4 Pro. So all round a really satisfying upgrade. That's just to focus on the PS5 edition. But yeah, it's really impressive what they've got going here, especially given it's 60 in both 30 FPS and 60 FPS.
So essentially the reason that this video has taken a little bit longer to get out of the gate is because we kind of discovered an issue, or you discovered an issue more specifically, while playing the game on Xbox Series X and I guess Xbox Series S as a result as well, where we're not exactly sure, or I would say we're of a very high level of confidence that the ray tracing is not enabled there, in spite of, what it says on the box or what it should be doing, right?
Yes, so visually, absolutely identical between the two machines. All the enhancements are there on both, but it's the ray tracing feature that it's not clear what's gone on entirely, because the official statement really is that the ray tracing feature is enabled on all three machines. And what we're seeing doesn't entirely match it because of the way it manifests in so many of these comparison shots.
Yeah, like here, where you fall into the swamp as the creatures, following your character, chasing your characters. If you look at the PlayStation 5, as it falls in, you can see that the reflection on the water stays stable. It doesn't change based upon the camera reflection, the camera angle. But on Xbox Series X, you can see it fade in and out, essentially. That's, like a typical case of screen space reflections. You may be thinking, okay, maybe the Xbox is using screen space reflections that are blending over ray trace reflections, which is something games do, and there's even an option in Unreal Engine 4 if you tinker about with it. But if you go into the hospital scene here, as your character has the flashlight out, for example, in that area of the hospital scene, you can see that on PlayStation 5, as the character's moving forward and illuminating the scene in front of them, like, for example, the little bookshelf on the left-hand side here, the character's reflection does not obscure the reflection of the bookshelf on the ground. And if you look at Xbox Series X in that exact same moment, in the areas where the character's reflection is, the reflection in front of the character goes to complete black. And you can also see that the reflection underneath the characters on Xbox Series X have a kind of stretched look to them. Like they start not where the feet start, but they kind of like start almost where their pant leg is, essentially. That's a typical disocclusion error that SSR has. And the fact that the reflection in that area is also purely black and not falling back to, say, QMAP or a ray trace reflection, that just shows essentially that I honestly do not think, based upon what we're seeing here and a variety of other scenes that Tom has really, painstakingly gone in and got extra footage for. I don't really think this is using ray trace reflections on Xbox Series X, especially. Like here, just like you look at the ground, the way the SSR works in Unreal Engine 4 is that it is not variable glossy. That means it always looks particularly sharp on every single surface that it applies to. The ray trace reflections don't do that, though. They're like more diffuse or softer depending upon the material type. On Xbox Series X, you can see the ground here is just completely, super sharp reflection. PlayStation 5, it's more like you would imagine a tiled floor would look like, a bit more diffuse. I mean, all these things based upon my entire experience with Unreal Engine 4 over so many years now, I just don't think it's properly enabled here in a way that we usually expect. And I think the PlayStation 5 is the proper visual output, and there's something not right here on Xbox Series X.
Yeah. One possible explanation is that there's a different shader property for the ground.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't explain why there's so many stuff reflected on the floor that disappears when you put it out of camera view, like this shot with the prison bars behind. Like there's a light just at the top of this, and whenever it goes beyond what the screen can see, the screen space view of the world, that projection is removed from the reflection as well. So it's very strange. Obviously PS5 is doing everything correctly here, as you'd expect. Ray tracing it stays consistent regardless of what's in screen space, and the GL bars as well seem to come in and out of view as we look up and down on this shot as well. And the general occlusion artifacting in close-up shots around the characters. So I'm not sure if it's an error, if it's intended. Possibly we'll get an update to hopefully put this in line with PS5, because they're so different in terms of their delivery of reflections.
Yeah, it's just essentially not what you would expect. And we waited to put this video out essentially because we wanted to inform the parties behind this game that we discovered this, and it would be a big part of our coverage, and something we always want games to turn out well,
And equally, we want the analysis to be accurate and explain what we see. So watch this space. There may be a change to the code, and if there is, we'll update and keep you informed.
That issue aside, how does it actually perform on both machines here, Tom? And what mode would you say is your preferred way to play?
Well, without question, the addition of 60 FPS on Next Gen is by far the main revelation for this version, the Enhanced Edition. It's a huge upgrade, and it means, for side-scrolling platformers, there's a benefit for lateral motion, and this game isn't, the fastest among them. Sonic or even Ori move at a faster clip.
Quite a bit faster, yeah.
But still, it does help with lateral motion to have it at 60. So this is my overall thought on this. With 60 FPS, you still get the ray tracing, and you have no major drawbacks except for a variable resolution, which is well hidden by a load of post-processing techniques. You've got chromatic aberration, you've got their chosen post-AA method, you've got motion blur, all woven into the post-process pipeline here. So in comparing, the two modes, you will see Beauty mode has a sharper picture, but in motion, in as you play, I don't think it's worth that trade in the kind of end result, and it's DRS as well, so you will get 4K at some point. With that in mind, 60 FPS runs flawlessly. I've not seen any drops, major drops at all. On top of that, if we move over to the Series X version, it's again just rock solid in that performance mode, no issue whatsoever. I will say there's been a couple of one-off dips that I didn't expect, a few areas where there aren't performance drops at all on PS5, which is a little bit odd.
And in spite of the fact that we see a non-visual parity, that's a bit weird. But so it is. Whatever.
So it is, but it won't affect your gameplay, and it's still the preferred mode easily. Likewise, Series S, there's that 60 FPS mode running faultlessly. So the easy choice is the performance mode, no question. But if we look over to the beauty mode, I think this hammers home just how crucial it is to have that 60 FPS option now. Because on next gen, the 30 FPS cap works well enough most of the time, but on the next gen consoles, the enhanced edition, we have what we call frame pacing issues. There's an uneven frame pacing line if you look at the frame time graph. It's not, too regular, but it happens often enough to register as a kind of judder. This is it. The implementation of the 30 FPS cap is different on next gen to how it was on last gen, where that was the default. 30 FPS was all you had, and fortunately it ran with an even frame pacing. So PS4 Pro, an example, all these areas, the whole game, smooth 30. Hopefully we can get this adjusted in some way, because as far as I can see, it's clearly a functional way around this in the way the game's handled 30 FPS before.
So what it sounds like at the end of this is that, for a free upgrade, we're getting a nice round out package here. Better frame rate overall on all versions of the game, better visual feature set. It's a great upgrade package, but the only issue that we're seeing at the moment is kind of like how the 30 FPS cap manifests on all machines, as well as the fact that we are not really understanding exactly what's going on with the reflections on Xbox Series consoles. We think that the RT is not working there as it should, right?
Yeah, that sounds like that in a nutshell. But, it is a great looking game regardless, and a genuine surprise. Definitely recommended to check this out, and we'll see how it goes on the ray tracing front. But for now, thank you so much for joining me, Alex.
Of course there, Tom.
And let's round out here. If you did enjoy this video, feel free to like or subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification button for instant updates anytime a new video lands. And of course, you can get this video at high quality among many others, and a suite of extras exclusive to Patreon on our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net. To get in touch with myself, Alex, or the rest of the team, we're on Twitter. But from the both of us, thanks for watching.